Walk through the historic, sun-drenched centers of Amsterdam, Paris, or Kyoto, and you are immediately struck by an urban layout that feels intimately human. The streets are narrow, vibrant, and alive, packed with bustling sidewalk cafes, multi-generational local shops, and vast crowds of pedestrians moving effortlessly beneath the shade of ancient trees. In these global cities, the automobile is treated as an optional luxury, an occasional visitor to an urban landscape designed fundamentally around the natural pace of the human footstep. But the moment you land in a major American metropolitan area, whether it is the concrete expanse of Houston, the gridlocked freeways of Los Angeles, or the sprawling strip malls of Atlanta, you enter a completely different, terrifyingly alien civilization. Here, the traditional concept of a city has been entirely erased and replaced by a concrete wasteland optimized solely for the high-speed movement and storage of 2-ton metal machines. Sidewalks end abruptly into empty dirt lots. Massive six-lane stroads cut through residential neighborhoods, and towering skyscrapers stand isolated in vast, boiling oceans of asphalt parking spaces that stretch as far as the eye can see. To an outside observer, this looks like a colossal planning failure, an accidental byproduct of a young country expanding too quickly during the industrial age. But the dark reality is that the destruction of the American city was To understand how the vibrant, walkable tramway networks of early 20th century America were systematically demolished, we have to travel back to the 1920s, an era when American cities actually looked and functioned exactly like their European counterparts. Before the mass production of the personal automobile, cities like Detroit, Los Angeles, and Cincinnati boasted some of the most advanced, hyper-efficient electric streetcar and trolley systems in the entire world. Regular working-class citizens didn't need to spend thousands of dollars maintaining a private vehicle. They simply paid a nickel to hop on a streetcar that connected their quiet residential neighborhoods directly to downtown factories, theaters, and grocery markets. This pedestrian-centric layout created tight-knit, financially resilient communities where small local businesses thrived on foot traffic, and public spaces belonged to the people. But this highly efficient public transit infrastructure represented a catastrophic existential threat to the massive, newly emerging corporate empires of Detroit, specifically General Motors, Firestone Tires, and Standard Oil. These corporate conglomerates realized that if Americans continued to enjoy cheap, reliable public transit, the domestic market for private automobiles, gasoline, and rubber tires would eventually saturate and collapse, limiting their corporate growth. What followed was one of the most corrupt, highly organized corporate conspiracies in industrial history, a systemic takedown known legally as the Great American Streetcar Scandal. Throughout the 1930s and 40s, a secretive front company funded directly by General Motors and its corporate allies quietly marched across the United States, buying up private electric streetcar systems in over 40 major cities, including the legendary Pacific Electric Railway in Los Angeles. The corporate playbook was chillingly efficient. The moment General Motors gained control of a city's streetcar network, they deliberately neglected maintenance, tore up the steel tracks from the pavement, burned the historic wooden trolley cars in open fields, and replaced them with slow, unreliable diesel-powered GM buses. This calculated sabotage intentionally turned public transit into a miserable, low-class experience, leaving frustrated commuters with absolutely no choice but to save up their money and purchase a private automobile just to get to work on time. By the time the federal government finally intervened and convicted General Motors in 1949 for illegal antitrust conspiracy and corporate collusion, the damage was already permanent, and the structural spine of American public transit had been completely snapped. With the streetcar network successfully wiped off the map, the automotive and oil lobbies turned their massive financial sights toward Washington, orchestrating a radical geopolitical restructuring of the entire American landscape under the guise of national security. In 1956, President Dwight D. Eisenhower signed the Federal Aid Highway Act, unleashing an astronomical, unprecedented wave of government funding to construct 41,000 miles of the interstate highway system. While these massive multi-lane freeways were originally pitched to the public as a brilliant defense mechanism to rapidly move military troops during a potential Cold War nuclear strike, corporate real estate developers and automotive executives saw them as a golden ticket to unlock infinite financial profit. Powerful highway engineers, backed by bottomless federal cash, aggressively plowed these massive concrete trenches directly through the dense, historic hearts of America's oldest cities, completely tearing apart vibrant communities, flattening thousands of historic brick buildings, and displacing millions of working-class families. Instead of bypassing cities to connect the nation, The highways were deliberately engineered to smash straight through them, permanently converting downtown centers into high-speed commuter conduits designed to pump suburban cars in and out of the city core. This massive influx of federal highway infrastructure triggered a catastrophic, self-reinforcing urban death spiral that systematically bankrupted the American municipality and permanently altered the daily lifestyle of the citizen. As the newly constructed freeways made it incredibly easy for affluent residents to flee the tax base of the city center for the newly minted suburbs, downtown businesses began losing their traditional customer foot traffic. To accommodate the massive daily influx of suburban commuters driving their private cars back into the city for work, municipal governments made a fatal, short-sighted architectural compromise. They began aggressively demolishing their own historic architectural heritage to create parking space. Over the course of the 1960s and 70s, beautiful historic theaters, ornate brick hotels, and entire blocks of thriving local storefronts were systematically bulldozed to the ground, replaced by flat, empty asphalt parking lots that generated virtually zero tax revenue for the city. In cities like Houston and Dallas, over 70% of the downtown landmass was eventually surrendered entirely to the automobile, leaving behind a sterile, post-apocalyptic landscape that was completely dead the moment the office clock struck 5 p.m. The ultimate permanent tool that locked this car-centric madness into the American legal framework was the nationwide institutionalization of strict zoning laws and mandatory parking minimums, which legally prohibited the construction of walkable communities. Under these strict, hyper-segregated municipal codes, it became a literal crime for a developer to build a traditional European-style neighborhood where a bakery or a local grocery store could sit directly beneath a residential apartment building. The law demanded that commercial zones, industrial sectors, and residential suburbs be separated by miles of empty space, legally forcing every citizen to utilize a car for every single mundane task of daily life, whether it was buying a gallon of milk or dropping their children off at school. Furthermore, draconian parking minimums forced small business owners to surround their buildings with massive, oversized asphalt parking lots designed for peak holiday crowds, artificially inflating the cost of commercial real estate and spreading buildings so incredibly far apart that walking between them became physically impossible and highly dangerous. The American infrastructure was no longer being designed to accommodate human anatomy. It was being legally engineered to serve the physical dimensions of a parked car. Today, the modern American citizen pays an astronomical hidden tax for this corporate-engineered dependency, trapped within a fragile urban layout that is both financially and socially bankrupt. The average American family is now legally forced to spend over $10,000 every single year purely to maintain, insure, and fuel the multiple private vehicles required just to participate in modern society, turning transportation into a massive financial drag on the middle class. Meanwhile, municipal governments across the country are facing severe multi-billion-dollar budgetary crises because low-density, car-centric suburban sprawl does not generate enough property tax revenue per square mile to maintain the endless, crumbling miles of asphalt roads, water pipes, and electrical grids required to service it. The lively public square, the historical space where communities met, children played safely, and democracy was practiced on a human scale, has been completely privatized and commodified into strip mall parking lots and drive-through lanes, accelerating an unprecedented crisis of social isolation, loneliness, and civic decay across the United States. It is time to look past the false corporate-sponsored myth of automotive freedom to recognize the profound structural imprisonment that defines the modern American landscape. The destruction of the American city was not an inevitable evolution of human progress, but a calculated triumph of corporate lobbying over human-centric design, trading centuries of walkable architectural heritage for short-term corporate profit margins. We must urgently upgrade our urban consciousness, actively challenge the outdated car-blind zoning laws that paralyze our neighborhoods, and begin demanding a return to transit-oriented human-scale development that prioritizes the pedestrian over the machine. Reclaiming our cities means recognizing that a true superpower is not a nation where the poor are forced to drive cars, but a nation where the rich proudly ride public transit alongside their fellow citizens. Have you ever visited a walkable city outside the United States and realized how much better life feels when you aren't trapped behind a steering wheel? Or do you live in an American suburb and feel the daily crushing weight of this concrete trap? Leave a comment below with your city and your thoughts, and let's decode the secrets of global urban culture together. Hit that subscribe button right now to unlock the next era of truth with Hidden America.
See you in the next video.